It's great to be back with you today, and what a blessing it is to worship with you. And just want to thank all of our worship leaders and team that leads us each week. What a great job this morning, as always. Last week we started a 2-week message series entitled A Friend and Me, and I hope that you stepped into some of your friendships last week and let your friends know how much that they mean to you, and that you're there to help them, that you're there to encourage them, and that you believe in them. Man, that'll make all the difference in the world. So hopefully you did some of that work last week. You got a couple of opportunities this week. Tonight's big Super Bowl, and I don't know if you're for the Eagles or the Chiefs or you're for the Who Cares team. I don't know. But likely you're going to gather with some friends and eat some chili pie or whatever it is that you eat on big games like this. Hopefully that game may give you an opportunity to spend some time with some people that you haven't had the opportunity to in a while, maybe some friends. It might give you the opportunity just to step into their life a little bit more and just say, hey, how can I help you? How can I encourage you? I wanted you to know, I haven't told you in a while, but I believe in you. Maybe you can use that big game for that. And guys, it's Valentine's Day this week. Guys, you're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. It might be a good opportunity for you to look at your spouse and say, hey, I want you to know, I love you, you know I do, but you have been such a good friend in me. I don't have a friend like I have in you. And I want you to know that I'm here to help you. I know you know that, but I want to encourage you. Tell me how I can do that better. And I believe in you. I believe in you. And you got to be careful, guys. You don't move back into the friend zone, but surely you're past all of that. But the opportunity for us to minister to those that God puts in our lives, we can't miss those, and you got a couple of those opportunities this week. Don't miss it. We started that series last week, and we really talked about the necessity of biblical friendship. And I gave you a couple key takeaways that I want to remind you of this morning. Takeaway number 1 is that friendship is a blessing from God, and God uses friendships in our lives to bless us and to bless those around us. And so we have that up on the screen. Friendship is a blessing from God, and God uses friendship to bless your life and the life of others. We all want the blessed life. If you want that blessed life, raise your hand. I'm sure you do. That's why you're here. Well, listen. Friendship is essential. Friendship is a necessity to that blessed life. And God has placed those friends in your life to give you the opportunity for more and more blessing. That's key takeaway number 1. Key takeaway number 2 is simply this. What is biblical friendship? Biblical friendship is obeying God's command to love others as you love yourself. Friendship is loving others selflessly, loving others sacrificially. Well, it's the second great commandment. Jesus says the second great commandment is to love your neighbor as your what? Self. That's right. And it's not easy being a friend always. It's not easy loving others the way you love yourself, because others, well, people can be messy. People can be hurtful. And so when you trust God's command, knowing that it's not easy, but when you trust God anyway and obey His command and love others, although it's not easy, when you obey and love others anyway, God looks upon that obedience and He blesses that obedience because you trust Him to love others no matter what. And so friendship is an opportunity for blessing because it's an opportunity to obey. The more you love others, the more blessing you're going to enjoy. You need friends. You can't live on an island and expect God's blessing because God uses friendships to bless our lives. The more you love others, the more blessing you're going to experience. And so, the more you love others, the more others are going to call you friends. If you just love others selflessly, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to call you friend. And the more you love others, the more you obey in that, even when it's not easy. The more you love others, the more blessing you're going to apprehend. Loving others God blesses that. Loving others, more blessing. Loving others, more blessing. Well, today I want to talk with you about the nemesis of biblical friendship. Because you have a nemesis that can keep you from loving others and keeping you, really, from blessing. And it ought not surprise you that when it comes to friendship that there's a nemesis, because there's blessing at hand. And the enemy doesn't want you to have that blessing, and so there is an attack on your friendships, on your relationships. An attack to keep you from loving others in order to keep you from blessing. And so there is an attack on relationship. There is an attack on community, because if the enemy can keep you from loving others, the enemy can keep you from the blessed life that God wants you to have. One of your greatest nemesis in your friendships is that of betrayal. Now, we know who's behind betrayal: Satan himself. But one of the greatest nemesis to friendship, to you loving others selflessly, is betrayal. Now, when I say betrayal, I'm not talking about others disappointing you. That is painful, but that's not what I'm talking to you about. And I'm not talking about others treating you unfairly. That's painful, but that's not what I'm talking about. Betrayal is an altogether different kind of pain. And it's not surface level pain. Betrayal, that pain comes from a wounded heart. Because that's what betrayal does. Betrayal can wound you emotionally. Betrayal is when someone you trust breaks your trust and breaks your heart and hurts you. Betrayal is when you allow someone into your inner circle and you let your guard down and you share things with them that you don't typically share with just anybody, and then they make you regret it. That is betrayal, and that's an altogether different kind of hurt. That's not surface level pain. That is a pain that comes from a deep emotional wound. And I have experientially, what I have found experientially is that a heart that's been wounded by betrayal can't heal itself. A heart that's been wounded by betrayal, it won't just heal in time. A heart that's been wounded by betrayal, you can't just spit on it or rub a little dirt on it or try to walk it off. If your heart has been wounded by betrayal, that is a hurt that only God can heal. That only God can heal. We can walk away from a lot of different kind of pain, but when it comes to the pain of betrayal, that's a hurt that only God can heal. And if you've had some of that kind of hurt, God can supernaturally heal that. He can. But you've got to give Him the opportunity to do it. I would dare say that most everybody in this room, us adults especially, we've experienced betrayal on some level in our life. So we all kind of know what I'm talking about. I mean, there's pain in relationships, but that betrayal stuff, when someone you allow to get close, when they betray your trust, well, that's a different kind of hurt, isn't it? And so all of us in here, adult-wise for sure, have experienced betrayal on some level. And there are some of you in here that have been hurt so deeply by betrayal that somewhere along the way you said in your heart, you said this, something like this. You said, I'm never, ever, 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 ever going to let somebody hurt me like that again. Now, if you said something like that and you've lived by something like that, I want you to know something. I get it. Because betrayal is hurtful. I get it. But I want you to see the problem in that. The problem is this, that it's really hard to love your neighbor as yourself when you're trying to protect yourself all the time from your neighbor. When you say, I'm never, ever, ever, ever going to let somebody hurt me like that again, all you're really saying is, I am just distancing my own self from blessing. Because if you're never, ever, ever going to let somebody hurt you like that again, that means you're never going to get close to somebody to actually love them selflessly again, which is God's command. And you're only keeping yourself from blessing. Remember, the more you love, the more blessing you're going to apprehend. If you've got your guard up, if you're protecting your heart all of the time, then you're just distancing yourself from blessing that comes from obedience and trusting God and obeying, even when it hurts. Even when it hurts. Maybe that's why Jesus had to command us to love our neighbors. He commands us to do that, which takes faith. To love our neighbors as ourselves, well, we know that's risky. We know that there's a chance we could get hurt. And that's why Jesus commands us to do it. He says, love your neighbors. Trust me in it. Trust me, and there's going to be blessing. Just trust me. I know it's tough. I know what you're thinking. I know you're rationalizing it's all the different ways and reasons why you shouldn't. That's why I'm commanding you to just trust me. Love them anyway, and I'm going to bless that obedience. When you've got your guard up, you're just keeping yourself from blessing. When you got your guard up, you're allowing that betrayal to hurt you every day because it keeps you from more and more blessing. We cannot allow betrayal to keep us from obeying and being in the midst of God's blessing. You got to recognize betrayal for what it is. You got to understand what betrayal can do. Because if your heart has been wounded by betrayal, it's got to heal properly, and only God can heal it. And if you don't allow God to heal it, then your broken heart may heal in all the wrong ways. It may scar up, it may become hard, where you're too cynical to obey anymore. So if you sense in you that you've been hurt deeply, you need to take your heart to God and ask Him to heal your heart, to keep it from becoming hard, to keep your heart soft, so that you can still love others and experience the blessing He wants you to have. Listen, you can't keep others from betraying you, but you can keep the hurt of betrayal from staying in you. We're called to love people. You can't keep them from betraying you. But you can keep that hurt of betrayal from staying in you. And the way you do it is you recognize it for what it is. And when you feel your old heart caving in and becoming broken, you take your heart and you give it to God and you beg Him to heal it so that you can continue to obey and step in the blessing that He's promised. I got to be talking to somebody in here. Betrayal is an equal opportunity offender. If you live in this world, you're going to experience it. Even David in the Bible experienced it. And he sings about this hurt of betrayal in Psalm 55, which is where we're going to be today. Psalm 55, he sings about betrayal. Now, we've spent a good chunk of this year talking about David. And I've tried to point out to you how great his resume is, and he has a great resume. In fact, if a resume like David's came in here to the pastor search committee, they ought to snap him up on the spot. Stop the process, just hire David. He's the pastor that we all need. And he is something. Great resume. I told you he was the second king of Israel. His son Solomon was king after him. Quite a family. And God used David, as you know, we've talked about it, as a shepherd boy to strike down Israel's enemy, a giant by the name of Goliath. That's pretty cool. And by the way, he made killing giants cool again in Israel. Everybody started doing it. Before the giant, shouldn't surprise you, he struck down that giant, but because before the giant, he had already killed the lion, the bear. Who does that? Killed a lion, he killed a bear, killed a giant, and then after that, if you just read his life, on the battlefield as a soldier, as a commander, whoo, he was something. I'd love to see some footage of David on the battlefield. That would go viral. I mean, going out there in battle, if God's for me, who can be against me? Can you just imagine him out there? He was something. And musical genius, I've shared that with you as well. I don't know if he had gone to the Grammys this month or not, but probably not. But if he had, he'd have won every single award. Just clean house. His musical genius is captured for you in the book of Psalm. The book of Psalm is a collection of songs. It's the Bible's soundtrack. It's the greatest soundtrack ever. And God inspired David to write the majority of the songs in that soundtrack. But as great as David was, perhaps the most impressive thing on his resume was the cover letter. The cover letter written by God himself, where God says of David that he is the apple of his eye and a man after his own what? Heart. The apple of his eye, meaning David had the gaze of God on his life. God was interested in David. It means that David was a man of God's favor and God's blessing. The apple of God's eye. That's pretty good. And then he's also a man after God's own heart, meaning he wanted what God wanted. He really wanted what God wanted. And so he trusted what God wanted. He obeyed what God wanted because he wanted what God wanted. His heart was soft to God. His heart was hot to God. And David knew that his heart was his greatest asset. If you were interviewing David, he'd say, what's the secret to all that blessing? He'd say, well, you got to have a hot heart for God, and I've tried to do that. Most guys miss that, you know. But I've always known that if my heart is set on God, his heart will be set on me. And so David is always trying to protect his heart because he knows that if his old heart all of a sudden went from soft to hard, that he may not be usable. He didn't want that to happen, so he was always working on keeping his heart soft because he knew how valuable that was to God. I want to be useful to God. Got to protect my heart. Got to protect my heart. Well, David is something epic. He's a legend. But even though David knew what the hurt of betrayal felt like, and man, you can read his life. That dude, he tasted some betrayal. And he sings about one of those times of betrayal in Psalm 55. He sings about betrayal, how much it hurt, and he also sings about what he did with his heart to keep it from becoming hard. Now, as you read Psalm 55, David doesn't tell on who the betrayer is here. I would have. I would have. But David's got such class. He doesn't name who the betrayer was, but most theologians believe that David is singing about the betrayal of his good friend Ahithophel, who betrayed him big time. I mean, David should have known better with a friend named Ahithophel. That sounds awful, right? But Ahithophel is somebody that David allowed into his inner circle. And with Ahithophel, David let his guard down and he shared things with Ahithophel. He didn't share just with anybody else. And in time, David regretted it. Because Ahithophel betrayed David's trust, broke it, and broke David's heart. And the way he did that was Ahithophel went out and joined forces with David's rebellious son. Anybody know? Starts with an A. Absalom. Absalom wanted to be king. And so Ahithophel, knowing that, joined forces with Absalom and helped Absalom architect a rebellion against his dad David that, if you read it, is absolutely disgusting. Disgusting and hurtful. That betrayal and that rebellion, it broke David's heart almost into two pieces. Almost into two pieces. And so David sings about this betrayal in Psalm 55. And what I want you to pick up on in here with this passage is not, well, here's what I want you to pick up on. I want you to pick up on that David, like all of us, experienced the hurt of betrayal. But David did something that most of us don't do. David, once betrayed, took his heart to God and asked God to heal it. David, like all of us, experienced betrayal. But unlike most of us, David did something that most of us don't do. David took his heart, which was hurt, to God, and he asked God to heal it. Most of us just hurt, but we don't take our hurt to God for healing. David did something that so many of us don't. Hurt, yes. But he took his heart to God and he said, oh God, here's my heart. You know how valuable this is to you. I don't want it to become hard, and I'm so hurt, God. Please heal it so I can stay useful to you. Please heal it so that I can still be sensitive enough to obey you and love others the way you've loved me. God, don't let this betrayal take me out of the game. God, pull this poison out of me. Pull this hurt out of me so that I can still be your David and still be hot in my heart for you. Many of us don't do that. We just hurt and we just take steps back. Never going to let anybody hurt me like that again. Never going to let, and we're just stepping out of blessing. We are stepping out of blessing. David said, not me. I'm not stepping out of blessing for Ahithophel. Yeah, I can't keep people from betraying me, but I can keep the hurt of betrayal from staying in me. And I'm going to take that hurt to God. And God wants me to stay in the game. God will heal me. God will heal me. He shows you how he does this in this psalm. Again, you're going to relate to his betrayal because we've all been hurt. But I want you to see what he did with that hurt, which is something that a lot of us don't do. Psalm 55, beginning in verses 12 and 13. I'm going to read a couple, 2 or 3, and then I'll stop and make a few comments. That'll be the rhythm. We'll just work ourselves through this. Psalm 55, verses 12 and 13. Listen to David saying, he says, for it's not an enemy who taunts me. Then I could bear it. It's not an adversary who deals insolently with me, and then I could hide from him. I could manage that. But it's you, a man, my equal, my companion, my familiar friend. I was thinking about this week. Just 2 words come to mind. It's you. It's you. I thought you were my friend. David's saying, hey, when it comes to pain, pain hurts. But if it came from an enemy, I could deal with it. If it came from an adversary, I could manage it. But this comes from a friend, and I can't bear it. I can't manage it on my own. It hurts so bad, I'm going to need God to help me bear it and manage it. And he will. He will. But he's telling you how big time this hurts. It's hurtful to feel pain from an enemy and an adversary. That ain't fun. But David said, I can get all that. You can kind of expect it. You can bear it. You can manage it. But man, being hurt by someone who's close, that has weight to it that's too heavy for me. That kind of hurt needs God's help. David's helping us with that. David's saying, hey, if you've been hurt in the heart by a close friend, it's too heavy to bear on your own. You need God's help. David's saying it's okay to ask for help. David's saying, I've done some cool things. I've killed some giants and all, but I've got something in my heart that's bigger than that giant. I can't deal with it without God's help. Can't. That betrayal thing, that hurt from a friend, whoo, that hurts. And David's saying, man, it stings big time. Stings big time. It's a wound in his heart that only God can heal. Catch verses 14 and 15. David sings, he said, we used to take sweet counsel together, talking about Ahithophel here. We used to take sweet counsel together. Within God's house, we walked through the throng amongst the assembly, amongst the people. Let death steal over them. Let them go down to Sheol alive, for evil is in their dwelling place and in their heart. David is saying, Ahithophel, it's like, I never really knew you. I thought I knew you, but I guess I didn't. I didn't think you were that guy. I mean, you and I, we used to take sweet counsel together. I mean, I would ask you for godly counsel, you'd ask me for godly counsel, and then we would stroll into God's house, and in front of all of God's people, we would ask God for counsel together. I mean, everybody would see us praying together, and they'd say, oh, look at David and Ahithophel. They're getting God's counsel. That used to be you and I. I thought that was you. I thought that's who you really were. But you're not. I was wrong. And you walked away from all of that. And now you only get counsel in evil, and you dwell in evil. You're not who I thought you were. If I knew who you really were, I would have never let you into my inner circle. You're altogether different than I thought you were. Your true colors have shown. It's just good to read this stuff because as I'm speaking here, there might be a circumstance or a name coming to your mind where you can relate to this. That you let somebody in your life and you thought they were one person, but you found out they were altogether a different person. And there's a little bit of that guilt that we have, like I never should have let them in anyway. I should have seen the signs. I should have known better. But listen, this isn't David's fault. Whose fault is this? Ahithophel's. Ahithophel walked away. Ahithophel went the way of evil. Ahithophel no longer wanted godly counsel. Ahithophel wanting not to dwell with God and God's people. Ahithophel wanted to dwell in evil. This is all Ahithophel's fault. It's not David's. David had a hot heart. He loved people selflessly, sacrificially, like Christ. And it's not his fault that Ahithophel went the way of evil. It's not his fault. People make decisions. People make their own choices. And they aren't always good ones. And if you're attached to somebody making bad decisions, it's going to be hurtful. That doesn't mean it's your fault. It's just that they've gone the wrong way at times. And so David said, it's you. I thought you were different than that. You're altogether a different person than I thought you were. But look at verse 16. Now, when you get to verse 16, this is what David does that you and I seldom do. We can all relate to verses 12 through 15. You've got somebody in your mind. You've got a circumstance in your mind. Your head is bobbing with me. Yep, I've experienced that. I know what that feels like. We all feel David's pain here. Like David, we all know what this feels like, verses 12 through 15. We're all there with David. And then in verse 16, David does something that you and I seldom don't do. In verse 16, he says, and I'm going to read down to verse 18. David says, but I hurt, but I've been betrayed, but I call to God, and the Lord will what? Save me. I don't know if you like underlining things, but if you're one of those, I'm going to give you a few things to underline. Just underline, save me. Save me. I call to God, and notice the confidence. The Lord will save me. And then notice his routine. Notice how disciplined he is with this healing process. In verse 17, he says, evening, morning, and at noon, I utter my complaint and I moan, and what? He hears my voice. He hears my voice. He calls to God. How many times does he call to God? 3 times a day. Morning, evening, and at noon. And notice he calls to God and he utters his what? Complaint. Listen, it's okay to complain to God as long as you don't complain about God. God is that listening ear. He knows all the details, and so he'll listen anytime you call. And David calls and says, you know, Ahithophel, it hurt so bad. He did this, he did that, and he just lays it all out. All of its gooey details to God, morning, evening, and at night. He's getting the poison out of himself. He doesn't want it to stay in and lock him all up. And so he feels poison, he feels bitterness, he feels like his heart's hardening. And when he does, it's time to call on God again. And he calls on God and says, here it is, I got to get it out of me, I got to get it out of me, I got to get it out of me. And God pulls all that hurt out of David 3 times a day, all that infection. Evening, morning, and at noon, I utter my complaint and I moan. Hey, I can relate to that. There are some times you hurt so bad, words can't describe it. I've heard myself moan at times. And it's not just because I'm getting older. How can I explain some of the things some of the hurt that we find in this world? But God understands our moans. You don't have to worry about how it sounds to God. You just got to get it out to Him. I utter my complaint and I moan, and catch this, He hears my voice. That's another one to underline. Will save me, hears my voice. In verse 18, he says, He redeems my soul in safety. He'll use all of this hurt. He's going to redeem all of this hurt and use it. He will. He'll redeem my soul. This isn't for waste. I don't get it. I know I hurt. But He's going to redeem all this and He's going to use it. Notice the confidence. He redeems my soul in safety from the battle that I wage, for many are arrayed against me. Why is David calling upon God? Because he has confidence that God has the power to save and redeem. He calls upon God because he knows that God hears him when he calls. I think one of the reasons why we don't call upon God is because we really aren't quite sure that He hears us. We're really not quite sure that He will do anything about what we're telling Him about. We don't think He's going to save us from it. We don't know how He's going to use it. We don't even think He will. And so we just keep it to ourselves, and we get so hard. We get so out of it spiritually. David didn't have that problem. David says, you know what David would tell us for not calling upon God? He would say, you guys don't know Him. Because if you knew Him, you know He's listening because He loves you. And you know He's going to save you from it. You know He's going to use it and redeem it. If you're not calling upon Him, David would say, you just don't know Him. Because if you know Him, you know He's going to listen and He's going to do something about it. Because He's with us. And David says, I know Him. Psalm 23. I have a shepherd. And he sings in Psalm 23 about all the ways that his shepherd takes care of him. David knew his shepherd. He knew the Lord, and he says, hey, Ahithophel, I thought I knew him, but I don't. But there is one that I do know, and that's the Lord. And He'll pick up the phone every time I call, and He'll hear me, and He hurts with me, and He'll save me from this, and He'll redeem me from this. God's going to take care of me, but God help Ahithophel. God help him. But thank God I have a God I can call. He'll call. And that's why he kept calling God. He knew God would always pick up. Morning, evening, at noon. When you hurt, do you take care of your heart like that? He is systematically field dressing his wound like he's on the battlefield. I had a surgery a little over a year ago. It was a gallbladder surgery, and it had some complications in the back end that were pretty weird. And that doctor gave me some instructions on what to do to deal with those complications, and I did them exactly the way he told me. Because I needed help. That's David. David's like, hey, God hears me. He knows what to do. And I'm going to take my heart to him 3 times a day, just like I'm supposed to. I'm going to keep doing that until my heart doesn't hurt anymore. Not just pray in the morning, God, I hurt, help me as I go. But no, God, here is my heart. Heal it. And then at noon, heal it. And then the evening, heal it. And then the next day, God, here it is. He's just rehabilitating himself in God's presence so he can get back in the game again. He's not going to allow Ahithophel to sideline him. Anybody like this stuff? Anybody with me on this stuff? Nobody, I get it. This betrayal stuff's hard. And look at verses 19 through 21. God will give ear and humble them. God will give ear to who? Him. He's calling. Who's not calling on God? Ahithophel. Who is calling on God? David. And God will give ear. He'll hear me. He always does. And he'll know what to do. He'll humble them. He who is enthroned from old, because they, Ahithophel, and guys like him, they don't change. They don't fear God. And he says in verse 20, my companion stretched out his hand against his friends. He violated his covenant, talking about Ahithophel. His speech was smooth as butter, yet war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet they were drawn swords. David is saying that he's got great comfort in the fact that he is calling on one who has always been. He's calling on the King of kings, the eternal King. And David is saying, hey, you are the forever King. You've seen it all before. You've seen stuff like this. And you've seen all of this that's going on with me. You know all about it. You knew it was coming before I did. And so you've seen it all before. You know what to do. You know what to do. You're not shocked by Ahithophel. You've seen that before. And you know how much it hurts me because you've seen it all before. And so you know how to help me. You know how to deal with him. You know how to help me. You know how to deal with him. You see the confidence? He's calling on the expert. He's calling on God who has seen it all and knows what to do. That's why I called that doctor after my surgery. I don't know what to do with these complications, but I'm going to call somebody who does. I'm going to get that doctor and ask him. He's seen it all before. And that's what that doctor said. Hey, we've seen this before. Don't worry about it. We know what to do. Just do this. You keep doing it. It's going to work. And that's what David's saying. David's saying, I'm calling upon you. And you're the God of old. You've seen it all. You've seen this before. You know what to do. I'm trusting you with my heart, and I'm trusting you with Ahithophel. I'm just giving it to you. You know what to do. Do you trust God like that? With those problems that you get yourself into, with all their complexities, do you have great confidence in calling out to God, knowing He's seen it all before and knows exactly what to do? And He's not going to just pat you on the back and say, go get after it. No, David says He's going to humble them. David sees God transcending into time and space and somehow, in some way, humbling his enemy. David sees God stepping into action. Do you see that? Do you see God stepping into your life when you call upon His name? You see the work David's doing internally? This is why he's a man after God's own heart. This is why David is David. Because he was willing to do the work to stay hot for God. He's willing to do what so many aren't. That when nobody's watching, he's calling out to God. Man, I love this in verse 22. Verse 22 is almost like he's giving you a testimony of the results. Of the results. This is almost like he's healed now. He says in verse 22, here's his testimony. Cast your burden on the Lord and He will what? Sustain you. He will never permit the righteous to be what? Moved. This is almost like he's coming back to you and saying, hey, I hurt, my heart was broken in two, and I called upon the Lord 3 times a day. I kept doing that. He heard me. He does what he always does. He knows just what to do. He saved me from myself. He redeemed all of that. And looking back on it now, my testimony is that you just need to cast your burden on the Lord. He's giving you a testimony of a healed heart. He's telling you, God did what I thought He would do. God healed my heart from Ahithophel. He's giving you a testimony. He's saying, hey, I'm telling you it works. And if you get yourself in a Ahithophel type situation, you need to do what I do, and God will do for you what He did for me. You just need to cast your burden on the Lord, and He will sustain you. He will never permit the righteous to be what? Moved. I want you guys to say that out loud with me. Let's just say all of verse 22. You ready? Cast your burden on the Lord, and He will sustain you. He will never permit the righteous to be moved. One more time. Cast your burden on the Lord. He will sustain you, and He will never permit the righteous to be moved. Do you believe that? David did, and that's why he called on the name of the Lord. He's not going to let me be moved. He knows what's going on. He'll deal with Ahithophel, and He'll sustain my broken heart, and He'll heal me. And He's telling you right here, I did it, and God did what I thought He would do. God healed me. Verse 23 is just cool to hear. He says, but you, O God, will cast them down in the pit of destruction. Men of blood and treachery shall not live out half their days. But I, what? Will trust You. Trust and obey. Trust and obey. I'm not going to allow Ahithophel to keep me from trusting and obeying. I'm going to keep on loving others because I know, God, You'll bless that. You promised You will. And I'm not going to allow anything, even Ahithophel, to keep me from doing it. I love this also because he's basically saying here, I'm not going to worry about getting even with Ahithophel. God will take care of all that. That's what he says in verse 23 there. God's going to balance the score. I don't have to worry about getting even. I just need to take care of my heart and trust God and just stay hot for Him and trust and obey Him. I just need to keep loving others the way He loves me. I can't pull myself out of the game. I'm just going to have to trust Him. So many times we get so focused and worked up about getting even, about winning every argument, making sure that we close the loop with people, that we just forget to trust God. David says, I can't do both. I'm going to let God do what He does, and He'll balance the tables with Ahithophel, but I'm going to trust Him and obey Him. I'm going to give Him my heart. Hey, as we close, I can't close this message without reminding you the Bible says that Jesus is the man of sorrows. You know that, right? That's one of the ways Jesus is referenced, the man of sorrows. It ought not surprise us He is, because Jesus loved and befriended a world that betrayed Him. And yet, despite the world's betrayal and ours, He loved us and befriended us anyway. Wow. Remember in John 15 where He tells His disciples, I no longer call you servants, I call you what? Friends. He explains to them, I'm calling you friends because I'm sharing with you things I don't do to share with everybody. But yet He knew full well when He said that they would go on and in their own way fail Him at certain times, disappoint Him, and even betray Him. But yet, knowing that, He didn't allow their betrayal to keep Him from loving them selflessly, loving them as friends. He kept His heart soft and usable, betrayed more than anybody who's ever lived. But yet, He served with joy. How? Well, many times, and it's something you pick up on in Jesus' life, He would remove Himself from the situation and withdraw, and He would go what? Pray. And what do you think you would find Him out there praying about if you were in there listening? He'd be calling out His hurt to the Father, pounding His hurt on a rock, calling out that betrayal so that it wouldn't get in Him and keep Him from what He was called to do, which was befriend you and I. I think out there alone with the Father praying, you just hear Him calling out that hurt, calling out that betrayal, keeping that betrayal from seeping in so that He could be that soft-hearted Savior that would go redeem the world on Calvary. The last night of Jesus' life, what do you find Him doing? Washing the feet of who? Judas. How could He do it knowing that Judas would betray Him for some coins, a betrayal that would lead to His death on a cross the very next day? Jesus knew all of that, but yet He befriended Judas right to the end anyway. Jesus said, you can't keep people from betraying you, but you can keep that hurt from getting in you. And you've got to keep that hurt from getting in you because you've got to stay focused on obeying and loving others selflessly. And He loved Judas selflessly to the end. And then the next day on the cross, He's up there on that cross for you and I, and He's dying for us who betrayed Him. And what do you hear from Him on the cross? Father, what? Forgive them. He didn't allow our betrayal to keep Him from loving us selflessly. He modeled it for us, promising us that God will bless obedience. And God did bless obedience of His Christ on the cross. And we enjoy that blessing today, and we'll enjoy it forever. We'll enjoy the blessing that came from an obedient Christ on the cross who loved us selflessly and sacrificially. We make things too hard. We got to keep it simple. Our role is to trust and obey and not allow anything or anyone to get in the way of that. If we'll stay focused on that, we'll find blessing.